I'm pleased to introduce today's guest, Beall of ConnectAndSell. If you're not familiar with ConnectAndSell, I highly recommend looking into the solution. At the high level, it helps reps streamline their cold calling, be more productive, and ultimately drive more revenue. Chris goes into a lot more detail around how it works and how it can be implemented. Chris and I spent a lot of time today talking about some of the tips and tricks that sellers can use as they're making their day-to-day cold calls. One big takeaway that I have that Chris pointed out was be focused on not trying to sell the full breadth of your solution on that first call. You really only have a couple of seconds to get the attention of your prospect. And so you don't want to try to overwhelm them with all of the different talking points around your product or solution, but rather just focus on selling to the next step. In many cases, that's just an intro or an overview call, possibly a demo call, but that's really the focus of every cold call, is just getting that next step and scheduling that next meeting. I'm very excited for the conversation and to share that with you. So with that, welcome Chris to the podcast. Awesome. Well, Chris, it's been a long time coming, and I've been very aware of who you are and who ConnectAndSell is for a long time, but I'm very excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, it's great to be here. This is something, Jesse. Who knew it? We could finally make it happen, huh?
Yeah. And the first thing I want to ask about, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile right now, and I recognize a couple of the schools on your CV here. I'm a Sun Devil myself, and born and raised here in the area in the East Valley Mesa area. And if I'm not mistaken, it looks like you might be from Arizona as well.
Yeah, I grew up out in North Scottsdale, but you got to imagine North Scottsdale in 1957.
Wow.
So that was the world I grew up in. So, we had roads. It was you could even kind of have a bicycle if you were tolerant, but it was pretty much horse country. And so I was raised with animals and books and not an awful lot of people.
So my father grew up in Scottsdale for the most part. He was born in San Francisco, but his family came out to Scottsdale pretty early on. And he used to talk about how where Fashion Square Mall is, he used to ride his dirt bike. This would have been like 1973 or something like that. But it's hard to believe that not that long ago, in the big scheme of things, it was just desert, and there was not, the Scottsdale or the Metro Phoenix as it is today.
Oh, there wasn't at all. I mean, Scottsdale was the most western town. We always were in the Parada del Sol, riding our horses, and no motorized conveyances allowed in that parade. I don't know if they still do that or not, but that's what it was like. So, and I still got stuff going on there. My sister, who's also my PR person, Shelly, you met her. She lives in my parents' home, when they were alive, way out in Ahwatukee. So Anyway, I'm a desert rat and just bought a place with my fiance down in Tucson. So what can I say?
So I'm here now too. I was in Austin for about a decade. So, and that's where I first heard about ConnectAndSell. I was working at a startup out in Austin. And then last year, kind of right in the middle of the pandemic, my wife and I decided, we're both from here and had been in Austin for, again, the better part of the last decade, and decided to come back. We missed the desert a little bit. So we bought a house out here, not too far from Ahwatukee. We're out in the Gilbert area, and we're enjoying being back. I don't know if we're here forever. It's a big country. There's tons of opportunity out there. But at the very least right now, we're close to family and enjoying being in the desert again.
Yeah, I like having a place in the desert. I didn't know it would ever happen, but we just bought one in February down in Green Valley. So we got that, and in sharp contrast up here in Port Townsend, Washington, where looking out the window right now, I can see Victoria, British Columbia, over a little island that protects our bay.
That's a great area too. That's the next thing for me is I need to get a property that's up in some greenery. That way I can have that balance, because being in the desert too long will mess with you. But it sounds like you got the best of both worlds. So
yeah, well, you get old, you figure stuff out when you get old.
So how does a guy from the middle of the desert in Arizona in the Southwest land in the tech business and ultimately become the CEO of a company? Tell me about that journey.
Well, I was kind of an unusual kid, I guess. I liked sports a lot. I did a lot of different stuff like that, but I was also kind of a math guy, and I ended up going off and getting a degree ultimately after stints as a professional gambler and rock climbing, mountaineering all over the country and stuff. Somewhere in there, I finally got a degree in physics and education. It was kind of a combo. That's what I finished up at Arizona State with, and needed a job, obviously. Was recruited to do some interesting things, like to run the Meson Physics Lab at Los Alamos National Laboratory. But I decided, I don't know, I was attracted towards kind of commercial stuff. I was actually attracted to education, but my high school physics teacher at Saguaro High talked me out of it. And so yeah, I thought, well, what do I know how to do that I can get into and you know, just kind of swim around and see what's up. And computer programming was real natural for me. So I started programming in 1968, not at the age of 68. And yeah, on a computer in Teaneck, New Jersey, that we could access through a teletype and telephone from Saguaro High and Scottsdale. Same computer Bill Gates used to use, apparently. And so, you know, it was so natural. I joined up with NCR back in 79. Took me forever to get through school. And, you know, I started noticing something really quick, which was I would take care of a customer or I'd build some software thing or other, and the reps never seemed to be able to sell it as well as I could. So I just started selling my own stuff. And then one thing led to another, went to Martin Marietta and ran software education and training there, went to Bell Labs, developed the Unix and C curriculum there, and then started doing startups. And the thing I loved about it was I could be the CTO, but I could also go out and make the sales. And I think that for me was very balanced. Like you were talking about the desert and, you know, and the greenery, right?
Yeah.
You know, working in tech to build stuff is kind of like living in the desert. There's not a lot to look at. You're looking at the code. But going out and selling is like being in the beautiful, you know, in the beautiful forest. There's so much to look at and think about. But after a while, you start to feel a little damp, you know, you want to dry out. So it was always kind of a balanced lifestyle for me. And it just grew on itself. So there you go.
Wow. I mean, the juxtaposition to be able to both build things and sell them, it's very rare. I can't think of very many people that I've encountered in my career that can do both well. I can think of a few, but not very many. It's definitely not the rule. It's the exception. So that's very cool that you were able to think more technically, but also, you know, get out and in an articulate way, present that to the end user or the customer, you know, in a way that encouraged them to purchase. Very, very cool. So connect and
sell. Yeah, it's a little different.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, it's different. It's a convenience in a way, right? I actually think there's a lot of really, really good sales talent that's hiding in the technical world, but nobody ever pulls them out and trains them and says, "Hey, this is good. You know, this is fun. This lets you see your creation in its actual form being used, not just like you built it and somebody else sells it. When you sell it, you're part of how it comes to life, and it's a lot more fun."
Yeah, I agree with that. There's been a lot of really great technical folks that I've worked with over the years, especially in earlier stage startups, that never get to see the end use case or the rollout or the deployment in a way that they really can visualize or at least see in action their work. And then also tying in the business value too. So that's a missed opportunity, because I know a lot of great engineers who have no idea that this feature that they build is driving XYZ amount of revenue for an enterprise or a large organization. And I think that's, again, a travesty that's not more, you know, embedded in the culture. And like you said, not nurtured more in especially a startup environment.
Absolutely. You know, today I had the pleasure, I was a little late for us talking because I was on with some folks who are doing a test drive of ConnectAndSell. And I still sell on the front lines. I don't just pick off the you know, big deals or whatever. I know some CEOs, they like to kind of stay away from that. I look at it the other way. It's a great way to get information, to know what's going on, and also to know what are your sellers having to put up with. Because stuff, really bad stuff, accretes in companies' policies and systems you have to update, and all this stuff turns you into a data entry clerk instead of a salesperson. And so, you know, I figure you stay on the front lines and you experience that stuff, and it makes you mad, and, you know, that's great. You kind of fix it up, but it also, you get to hear stuff like, one of the three owners of this company we were working with today, we do this thing called an intensive test drive, free day of production. And
Wow.
I got on with him and the executive briefing said, "What'd you think?" And he said, "I talked to somebody I've been trying to reach for 5 years."
Wow. In one day?
In one push of a button, actually, is the first person
Wow.
to talk to. But it's like, that is gratifying and satisfying when you build something and you're immersed in that side of it and you're thinking, what the value is. And then it's like, oh, well, here's this other piece of value, which is, you can get a hold of people. I mean, I've now seen it for a while, but it's not just numbers. It's the surprise of somebody you've been trying to reach for 5 years. It was a current customer he's been trying to reach for 5 years.
Wow. So a really stale customer then, an elusive one. Interesting.
Yeah.
So walk us through a little bit. So how did you get the idea for Connect and Sell? And then please, this is something I forgot to mention when we were off air, but I'm all for shameless plugs. They're not, shameful at all. Please plug the solution. I'm very familiar with what it is. Unfortunately, I've not ever had a chance to use it in production in any of the companies I've worked at, although we've evaluated it a few times. Oddly enough, my wife has. She's been able to use it in an environment that she worked in. She was in a business development role for a while at a technology startup out in Austin and used it there. So I unfortunately haven't, even though I've stayed in the tech business longer than she has. She dropped out of the business and moved on to the healthcare industry. But I'm curious how you got the idea for it. And then, an overview of how it all works just for listeners, because my understanding is it's a really cool technology and a game changer when you're doing outbound prospecting.
Yeah, so I didn't come up with it at all. It was actually the invention of another person, and it was invented like this. This individual was in India and had some people working for him, and he wanted to call back to the States. And he had a list. We always have a list, right? You never just have one person, or it takes a few seconds and then it's over. So he had a list, and he said, "Hey, what if I print the list out into 6 sub-lists, tape them down to a table, put a telephone next to each one, and get one of my Indian employees to call, navigate the phone system. And if they get the person, but only if they get the person, don't say a word. Just hold the phone up over their head and I'll grab it and look to see where their finger is on the list and talk to that person."
Wow.
That's how it was invented. So, they said, well, obviously you would want to put that into software, but with the people still, so to speak, around the table. Think of it as it's like there's an old Far Side cartoon I really like that shows 2 polar bears looking at an igloo, and one of them says to the other, "I love these things, crunchy on the outside, chewy on the inside." It's like, that's what this thing is like, is it's crunchy on the outside. It's got technology that does all sorts of really cool stuff. But on the inside, it has that flexibility and intelligence and ability to interact with gatekeepers and funny phone systems and all that only comes from humans. So at this moment, as we speak right now, we've got roughly 600 people who are navigating phone calls on behalf of other folks out there at this instant. But it's all buffered up with technology and managed in such a way that when you're the user, all you do is push a button. You just push a button and you wait. And I've got somebody who works for me. Her name's Cheryl Turner. And Cheryl, she goes out to the park with her 3-year-old, and she talks to CEOs while she's got her 3-year-old on the swings at the park. Now that's work-life balance right there.
That's amazing. Wow. And walk us through again. So how does it work? So the dials are kind of running, or do you call them dials, or it's just sort of automating the outbound dialing piece? And then when someone does connect, Cheryl, for example, can connect with that CEO and start having a dialogue and give her elevator pitch or whatever. Is that how it works?
Yep. Yeah. So what Cheryl does is, she pushes her daughter on the swings, she hits the button. That's what we call it, press the button.
Press the button. Okay.
And so it's just one button. The button's just like calling an Uber. There's not much to it, right? Here's the button. And so she's loaded. What she's done is she's loaded her list. She's dialed into the system. Now she also uses our mobile app, which is pre-dialed in, but you dial in through any telephone. You're in a conference bridge. There's no one in there. You're all alone. It's quiet, a little creepy. And you pick your list, which your list is normally hooked up to the CRM. So it's some report in Salesforce or Dynamics or whatever, but it could just be a file that you loaded up. And then whenever you want to talk to somebody, you just push the button and you wait. And the average wait time is just around 4 minutes, highly variant based on the list. And then at some point, here the system is on the inside, it's out dialing in parallel. But every dial is managed by an expert, a dial navigation expert. And what that person does is they work that dial, the dial by name directory, the IVR tree, the gatekeeper, they ask for a transfer. They do everything you would have to do, but they're doing it in the background, 4 or 5, 6 at a time. So now you've got the speed of parallel dialing, but you have the flexibility and intelligence of humans taking care of stuff. Then say I'm on your list, right? So you have a list of, I don't know what, 2 people, 50 people, 1,000 people, whatever. Say I'm on your list and I'm the lucky victim, right? I'm the one who answers. So So I answer, this is Chris. And this is what's amazing, right? I see a phone number I don't recognize. For whatever reason, I want to answer it because it's whatever. Who knows why, right? Why did that guy that this person was trying to reach for 5 years answer? Who knows? But they answer.
Right.
So I answer, this is Chris. And the next thing I hear is you, because you get a beep in your ear, bloop. And it pops up on the screen. It says Chris Beall, CEO, Connect and Sell, and maybe some notes from our last conversation, like a little teleprompter because we talked before, or maybe it's a cold call and it's just, what are you going to say? And so say it's a cold call, you're going to say something to me like, hey, Chris, Jesse here. Hey, I know I'm in an interruption. Can I have 27 seconds to tell you why I called? And I'm going to go, sure, go ahead. And then you're going to say, well, whatever you're going to say, right?
Wow. That is really cool. What do you guys do any kind of training or enablement to teams that are rolling it out? Is that part of the implementation process is training? I'm just trying to think through. Once upon a time, I helped a big technology firm in the Bay Area build out a sales development team. And a lot of the folks, which also comprise a lot of my listeners, are folks that are new to the industry, reps that maybe are a year or 2 out of school. They're in their first sales job and they're new to the concept of cold calling. What training do you guys offer, and what advice could you give someone who's new to cold calling, who might be using a tool like Connect and Sell, or not using a tool like Connect and Sell to make sure that they sound polished and scripted, and that the cold call is a successful one or as successful as it can be? Anything there?
Sure. So here's the cheap way to do it. You go to the Connect and Sell blog, and somewhere in there is an article. You can Google it up because it's pretty popular actually. And it's called 5 Sentences That'll Change Your Life. And it's a 2-part series that takes you word by word, tone by tone, how to talk to somebody in a cold call and why you can reliably take somebody from their fear, not your fear, but their fear of you as the invisible stranger, instantly to trust in 7 seconds. It's a technique that was taught to me by Chris Voss, author of Never Split the Difference, the FBI hostage negotiator. Cool. And it's guaranteed to create trust. It does it every time if you do it right. It takes 7 seconds. And then from that point, first of all, your mindset is different then because you realize you're the scary person. There's no point in being scared because you're the one who's scaring them. You're the invisible stranger. And in the environment of evolution in the village, the invisible stranger is people from across the river, and they paint their faces vertically, and we're civilized. Right. We paint our faces horizontally, right? And they're really, the things they do over there, they put a bone in their nose, and we know the bone goes in the ears. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, exactly.
So when they're invisible, it's nighttime, and we don't like that because when people show up at night in our village, they're not bringing us a Bud Light, right? They're here to change the demographics violently. So we don't like that. Well, you are that. When you cold call somebody, you are that invisible stranger. And the beauty of it is, if you relieve that fear and you show the other person, you see the world through their eyes, and then you demonstrate to them that you're competent to solve a problem that they have right now, they will trust you. And the problem they have right now is real simple. They want to get away from you. They want to get off that call, but with their self-image intact.
Sure.
That's it. It really learned that. And then the purpose of ConnectAndSell is just to have more conversations, but we teach how to do it, because otherwise we're just amplifying suck.
That's the concern I imagine you guys hear a lot is, well, wait a minute, what if our reps aren't good at cold calls? What happens if we what happens if we scale that up to a point where there's 600 rings going on in a couple hours? Then we're just going to sound awful and unprepared in the market. So it sounds like you guys have a toolkit for companies and teams to have some frameworks there. I'm a huge fan of Chris Voss, by the way. I reread his book probably about once a year, just to remember everything from the calibrated questions to actually how to negotiate with my toddler. So there's a lot of value there. And that's really cool that's really cool that you guys use some stuff out of his playbook, because I think it's extremely effective as you're negotiating, but also for the cold calls.
Well, yeah, cold call really is the hostage negotiation at the 1.0 level, right? I mean, what's happened is you've ambushed somebody and you're now the hostage taker, but you got to initiate the negotiation to resolve the situation. So it's a very subtle thing. It's unlike everything else in sales and anything else in sales is the cold call. And it's the most important thing you can possibly do. So, learning to do it's important. And we finally went to the next level. Now, Manny Medina, the CEO founder of Outreach, years ago, he took me out, plied me with bourbon is all I can say, because I didn't know how to drink bourbon. So he taught me this notion of something called bitters and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And he said, look, Chris, you got to start a training company or training division. And I said, I do not want to do that, Manny. That's a terrible idea. And he said, no, you got to do it because the industry is stuck. Our users don't know what to say on the phone. And so, we finally get them that conversation. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to say it. And I know you're an expert on it. So you got to do something about it. Well, finally we did. And so we've recently introduced this thing called Flight School. And Flight School is a 4-session blitz and coach live fire experience where you make money while getting trained.
Oh, all right. That's interesting.
It's different. So it's live fire. You're talking to real prospects. You're getting coached on every conversation. And it's so precise that the first 2 hours, even though you do the whole conversation, you're setting meetings, doing the whole bit, you get coached on the first 7 seconds. That's all.
Huh. And how long does the program last, or the training? Is it a couple days, a couple weeks? What have you seen?
Yeah. So it's 4 sessions, 2 hours each. Blitz and coach tends to run about 2 weeks, sometimes a little longer. Starts with a messaging workshop. Speaking of Austin, by the way, I had a CEO in Austin. Once I do messaging workshops myself. I kind of came up with the idea, and it's about an hour, of which a tiny bit is their message. The rest is the psychological framework, because that's what really counts. You're learning how to take somebody on a journey, an emotional journey, from fear to trust to curiosity to commitment to action, to attending the meeting. And so the CEO says, look, I don't want to attend your stupid messaging workshop. That's like, I have people to do that kind of crap. And I said, well, if you don't want to attend, I won't either. It'll be really easy. We'll both save our day. It'll be great. And he says, oh God, if I have to, So he sits through the messaging workshop. And at the end, I asked him, what'd you think? And he said, Chris, I just had my admin buy a plane ticket to come up to Reno and buy you dinner tonight. I'm coming up.
All right. When we stop recording, I want to know which CEO this was. I don't want you to say it on the air, but I'm really curious. I did a lot of networking in Austin. I imagine it's someone I'm aware of at the very least, but that's awesome.
I'll have to look him up, because we do so many of these. We do 700 test drives a year. That's a full day of, like the one we just did. I just got off today. If I were to look at the results, right? This is a little team, very experienced entrepreneurs, really, really something. And during their test drive, which lasted 2 hours, 26 minutes, and 30 seconds, they had, as a team of 5, including 3 founders, 3,209 dials, 116 conversations, and they set 7 meetings.
Wow.
And so, by the way, speaking of Austin, Tony Safoyan and the group at SADA, you must know those guys, right? SADA is Google Cloud's #1 partner.
I do,
Big
yeah.
presence in Austin.
Yep.
Yeah. So Tony had me on his podcast, Cloud and Clear, and he and Billy Franz, his VP of Inside Sales, and I were talking. I said, Tony, didn't you guys make some money on your Connect and Sell test drive? And he laughed and he said, yeah. And Billy says, yeah, we made tens of millions of dollars that day.
Whoa. From just pipeline built that ultimately closed. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. The business model is a little complicated to me. Somehow
Right.
it had to do with creating pipeline for Google, but it was that was a revelation to me. It's like, oh, tens of millions. Okay, I guess yeah.
How's that for a proof of concept, right? Is generating tens of millions in new revenue in a that short of a window.
Yeah, it's a lottery ticket. You don't know what's going to happen. Like this particular company today, their 7 meetings. Given their business, I think they're going to do pretty well. I think that was about maybe 30 or 40% of all the meetings they'd set normally in a year, and happened in 2 hours and a half.
Wow.
So they'll do pretty well. Sometimes people set no meetings in their test drive, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
They just have a ton of conversations, and that's all right.
What, in your observation, kind of going back to how reps specifically can improve their call acumen, whether that's a cold call or a follow-up to an executive they maybe had an interaction with at some point in the past, excuse me. What, in your observation, is some of the pitfalls that you see reps falling into, or what are some of the mistakes you see reps making on the front lines all the time as you're working with and coaching some of these reps?
Yeah, well, number one is that they are encouraged to make a hideous mistake, which is to mention what their company does. And that kills curiosity right there. To say, in fact, I'll give you an example. I'll give you our breakthrough script that we use at Connect and Sell for ourselves, right? So our breakthrough script goes like this. It's like, it starts the way I had it before, right? Well, I know I'm an interruption. Can I have 27 seconds to tell you why I called? And the first part's hard, flat, cold, throw myself under the bus. The second part is playful, curious. Come along with me. I'll solve your problem. Your problem is me, and in 27 seconds, I'm gone and your self-image is intact. Good deal, right? So you're going to say, sure, go ahead, right? Why not say yes to that? It's kind of like, why fight me for 24 seconds over 27 seconds? So then I'm going to say, Jesse, I believe we've discovered a breakthrough that completely eliminates the waste and the frustration that keeps your best sales reps from being effective on the phone or even using the phone at all. And the reason I reached out to you today is to get 15 minutes on your calendar to share this breakthrough with you. Do you happen to have your calendar available? Now that's the whole script, and delivered precisely like that with that tone, great things happen. Notice what wasn't in there. I didn't say this. Here's how I could blow it. I believe we've discovered a breakthrough dialing technology that completely eliminates, boom, dead, shot in the head.
Yep.
Why? Because as soon as I say that, they're going to say, wait, I got another way out of this conversation. And as soon as there's a pause, they're going to go, you know what, Chris, thanks. I really appreciate the call. We're set. And now I'm doomed, because the we're set objection is the one unanswerable objection. And marketing people who craft your message will accidentally, unintentionally, with all the best intentions, lure you into a trap you can't get out of. So as a sales rep, you have to know marketing language kills cold calls.
Yeah,
100%.
It does. It makes it just prospects can tell. It feels like a cheesy sales pitch. It's no longer and there's no curiosity, because like you said, it kind of lets the cat out of the bag, and that elusiveness is gone. And you killed it.
That's the number one thing that I see reps do. Well, number one is they won't throw themselves under the bus. They just won't. They're uncomfortable being a bad thing, whereas in fact, they are a bad thing. If I cold call you, I am a bad thing. I just have to own up to it and then move on. Like there has to be a reason I did it, right? So that's number one. Number two is, maybe this is the number zero. They don't really believe in the value of the meeting independently of the deal. So they're doing it for false reasons. They're calling in order to get you to do something that's good for them. So failure to believe in the potential value of the meeting, not the product, but the meeting as a learning experience for this human being, even if you never do business together, failing to get that belief deeply in you puts you on shaky ground when you're selling in general, because you have to sell the meeting first. Now, so number 2 or 3 or whatever is selling the product, not the meeting. You can't sell two things at once. You just can't. I was a Fuller Brush man. I would knock on the door in Phoenix. Imagine selling Fuller Brush in Phoenix, right? And not knowing anything about sales. I've just graduated from ASU. My wife's had a miscarriage. I got to pay the medical bills. I get a job the next day selling Fuller Brush. I don't know anything about doing this. So I could have knocked on the door and said, hey, whoever you are, I don't even know your name. I've got this really cool spider spray here, blah, blah, blah. Like, really? Boom, door slammed in my face, right? Or I could do what I did, knock on the door. Nice lady answers the door. I say, hi, I'm Chris Beall. I'm your new Fuller Brush man. I don't know what Fuller Brush is. No, I'm sorry, I blew it. I had a practice back then. I'm Chris Beall. I'm your new Fuller Brush man. You probably don't know what Fuller Brush is. I sure don't. And then I just stand there. And eventually, with their air conditioning pouring out into the street in a 115-degree day, they'd say, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Now that's pretty easy, right? How can I help you? And I'd say, here's the thing is, my understanding, and it may even be just a rumor, is we have some products that you can't buy in stores that are really good around the house. I don't know if this is true or not, but if I find 1 or 2 that I really think could make a difference in your life, can I come and share them with you for 5 minutes? Everybody said yes, right? Because I was letting them off the hook. They got to close the door.
Yeah.
I offered a solution to the problem they had, which was me. And I went away. And then I fulfilled my promise. This is true in every cold call. You must fulfill your promise. My promise was I'd go do research for them. So I went and did research. And then I came back with products that I sincerely believed, according to my research, working with real human beings over the weekend, I got a bunch of samples and did stuff, that this had a potential to change their life. And by the way, spider spray for black widows in Arizona, it does have a potential to change your life.
I'll have to check that out. Very interesting. And it's funny, a few years ago, I made this shift too, where first I was selling I started first selling the meeting instead of trying to just vomit the product value pitch out there in the point however many seconds that you have before someone clicks, hangs up the phone. And it does make a huge impact. So you're dead on. I absolutely agree. It absolutely resonates as a seller that you can't try to do too much on a cold call. You've got to just get them curious enough. And then, like you said, solve the first problem, which is you as the cold caller, and get into the air conditioned house, and then work on the next step, not try to do too much right there on the porch. I love it.
Yeah, I used to, as I mentioned before we got on the air, I grew up in horse country. Maybe it was on the air. I grew up in horse country. And so as a 7-year-old, I had to learn to bridle a horse by myself. Now, horses are big. They're just like a prospect. Yeah. Prospect's always bigger than you are, faster than you are, and they can kick harder than you would like them to do it, right?
Right.
And so it's not great to try to deal with a big animal. How do you do it? And my sister Wendy taught me this. She said, just put a small piece of carrot in each hand and take the bridle and put it behind you, hook it to your belt, and then hold your hands about 2.5, 3 feet apart, fists closed, right? So they can't, poor horse has to make a choice. And the horse will be afraid of you at first. They put their ears back and they tilt their head up, by the way, because horses' eyes work in an interesting way. They can see detail through the bottom of their pupils. So they put their head back so they can see you in sharp detail because you're a bad thing. Same game. So then you approach, you wait, they calm down, their ears come forward, and then curiosity takes over and they choose a hand. Whichever hand they choose, you turn it over, they eat the carrot, you reach behind yourself, you grab the bridle, you take it up very slowly, you stroke the horse's face. While they're eating the carrot, they get used to that, and you loop the bridle over their ear, right? And then you work your way to the hard part of getting the bit in their mouth. This is, to me, identical to a cold call. All we're trying to do is to get them to come toward us out of curiosity, rather than chasing them around. And reps they don't love it. They're irresistibly drawn to chase the prospect around.
Sure.
And you can't catch them. You can't catch them.
I wonder why that is. Why is the default? Is it just human psychology, or are we all being trained in some weird backwards way that we should be chasing instead of luring or drawing the curiosity out? What do you think?
I think it's a lack of training, and a lack of
training.
Not just training, but a lack of understanding what is the situation you're in and why is it so good for you. You know, reps are taught, be tough.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, be tough, be macho, get up, put in the effort, bang, 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 bang. It's like, how do you calm down and let somebody come to you if you're so busy, you know, doing that one more this and that, you know, that's like doing push-ups or something. And there's actually no upside in that. I call it there's the tough part, and then reps are also rewarded in a funny way. They're rewarded for results, for stuff that's right in front of them, so they're tempted to go right at it. I call it the dog, the bone, and the chain link fence problem. So if you ever had a dog that, we had 16 of them at one point, so I got, like, dogs I understand a little bit, right? So we had a dog that if you put a bone or a piece of meat on the other side of the chain link fence, the dog would try to push its nose through one of those diamonds in the fence to get to the meat, and the gate's 5 feet to the right, and it's open. But the dog doesn't get it.
No, it's going straight at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what salespeople do, and their nose gets bloody, and then they're told, you know, be tough, be tough, be tough. There's like a macho thing in sales about being tough and being strong and being, you know, persistent and all that. So, I mean, at ConnectAndSell, we think that's all a little comical, because when you think about it, it's not toughness, it's really persistence. And if you have to dial manually, I'm sorry, you know, I'll do something about it if I can, but you can still do it. You just have to kind of ignore it, because that's not sales. You're just going, okay, this is not my sales activity. But when the conversation happens, I've got to be ready to be precise. I have to be precise in taking this person on an emotional journey from their fear to trust in 7 seconds. I've got to be precise in taking them from trust to curiosity in the next 17 seconds. I have to be precise in handling the natural objections. I'm busy, this, that, the other thing. I have to be a little bit insistent, because I truly believe in the value. And I've got to turn that curiosity, after I get trust, I got to turn that curiosity, which, by the way, when I said, I believe we've discovered a breakthrough, I believe makes them listen. We is ambiguous, and we is ambiguous about people. And people love to be curious about people. That's why there's a magazine called People Magazine. That's why, you know, people are going right now, where's Prince Harry? Is he talking to the Queen? Is there anybody in the United States of America whose life is actually affected by whether Prince Harry talks to the Queen or not?
I can't imagine. I mean, journalists maybe who have to write about it, but that's about it.
That's about it, right? But there's a big audience of, like, where's Prince Harry? Did he go there to talk to the Queen? And who has COVID anyway? And blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
So, you know, people are intensely curious about people. So I believe we, ambiguity, have discovered this. This keeps you away from what I call the third grade playground. If you say this instead, it's like, hey, Justin, I'm Chris Beall. I'm with ConnectAndSell. We've helped companies like, and then I name some of them, right? Now, what I'm saying is, we're great. Therefore, I'm great. And what's going to happen inside you? You're going to say, no, you're not. right? And we're in the third grade playground. My daddy is stronger than your daddy. No, he's not. Yes, he is. No, he's not. Yes, he is. No, he's not. And then we end up in the dirt and we get valley fever and stuff like that. And it sucks.
Yep. Yeah.
So anyway, these are the techniques, and they're really specific. And this is what we teach in flight school. We teach this stuff word by word, tone by tone, psychological, emotional state by state, second by second, because this is truly, this is like martial arts. You can say, oh, that person looked like they executed this move, like, or in fencing or something, right? You can try to pretend to be a fencer. My fiance used to be a fencer at MIT, at the MIT fencing team. I guarantee you there's a difference between looking like a fencer and fencing, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they just are not the same thing. And you don't want to look like a salesperson. You need to have the precision down for this highly athletic activity called the cold call, which opens up everything in sales. Everything in sales is different once you get trust, including email. I send you an email right after a conversation. You're going to open it. Hey, thanks for the conversation, Jesse. What are you going to do? Ignore that email?
Yeah, we just talked. No, exactly. Very cool. This is, I feel like I should be paying you, Chris, because I feel like I'm undergoing some sales training here. So this is fantastic for my audience who, again, is a lot of reps who are relatively new to the industry. I'm curious, and I haven't really been posed this question directly myself. This goes quite against my beliefs about how to sell. But have you encountered people out there that say, well, cold calling is a lost art. It's not the fastest way to get a deal done anymore. I can't imagine there's too many people out there that are playing this trumpet, but do you guys ever run into that in your day-to-day?
Oh yeah. I mean, out on LinkedIn, cold calling is dead was incredibly popular for a while.
Yeah.
I had a really fun little post I put out once. It was for a funny reason. I won't tell the whole story here, but it was frankly to try to get Mike Weinberg to pay attention, because he uses, he's the author of New Sales Simplified, one of the greatest sales books of all time. And he uses the phrase, the cold calling is dead crowd, rather derisively. And so I couldn't get a hold of him one way or another, couldn't get him to take a meeting. So I posted this little thing that just was the results of a test drive. That was it, just raw. It was on my screen. I screenshot it, boom, threw it up in a LinkedIn post and said, if cold calling is dead, who got these results last Thursday? Did zombies call the CIO of Carnival Cruise Lines? That was kind of it. Oh no, busy executives don't answer the phone. I must have been dreaming. That was it. It's called the Zombies Post. And I think we made about $1.7 million off that post. It went viral, people going crazy. I wrote stuff all day. And what was funny is some people came on and accused me of, like, so do you run a sweatshop? Do you eat babies? What evil things do you do other than this? This is the worst, but maybe you do some that aren't not quite as bad, but are pretty bad, right? There's something about cold calling. Maybe it's the name, that it's cold. It sounds cold-hearted. All it means is an unscheduled first conversation. That's literally all it means.
Right.
It's cold. But people say it all the time.
And I'd be curious too, what you say to people that say, well, hold on, we sell to, I mean, you've already shared some hard and fast examples just on this podcast, but I'm sure you encounter a lot of people that say, well, our buying demographic is the CIO or the CEO or the CMO. They don't take cold calls. Every phone conversation or Zoom meeting that takes place with professionals like that has to be highly personalized. And we believe in prep, and something like Connect and Sell couldn't work because it puts the rep right on the fly on the phone with this person. How are they supposed to present something of value if they are, there's no prep or anything like that in advance? How do you respond to an objection like that? I'm sure you get it.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, the question number one is, do senior executives answer the phone? The answer is yes, they do. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Our own team, I can share it today. Let me just take a little look, see how we did today. Okay, so here's the Connect and Sell team. I know we're not on video, but I'll read it off. We'll just look at the leaderboard. for today, leaderboard, Connect and Sell team. How did we do? Let's see. Our name starts with a C. You know, I used to be able to write and read, and then I went into sales. Connect and Sell. There we go. There we go. I got to put the glasses on. Okay, so here's our team today. Now, here's who we're calling: vice presidents of sales, CROs, and occasional VP of marketing. But it's all vice president level and companies of all sizes. So our stats today for the team are, where the team is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people today. So we have a very small team because, hey, we have Connect and Sell, right?
Yeah.
I have a big team when you can have a small one. So they had done for them by Connect and Sell some dials. They had 270 conversations. They set 27 meetings. So 27 meetings, that's pretty bizarre. Absolute 10% on the nose conversion rate, conversation to meeting. It took 34.69. Yeah, they're pretty good. It took, they're coached, by the way, professionally. Every day they're coached professionally. And that doesn't mean management. Management doesn't coach our team. A coach coaches our team, just like in the NFL.
Sure.
So dial per conversation, 34.69. So not a great dial per meeting today. That's 346.89 dials per meeting. I like that number to be below 300, but I'll take the 27 meetings. Say those meetings are worth for us probably, let me rough cut, $4,000 each, right? So the team roughly created about $120,000 in meetings today. And that's, you know, whatever that was, 11 people. But if I look at any one of them, this is what's interesting. So Crystal, here's Crystal Lechner. She used Connect and Sell for 5 hours, 12 minutes, and 24 seconds, calling vice presidents only of sales. She had 42 conversations, 3 meetings, set 23 follow-ups. And when she pushed the button, she had to wait for an average of 4 minutes and 54 seconds. Why? It's the last day of the second quarter. So instead of waiting 4 minutes on average, she had to wait a little longer because she's calling VPs of sales, right?
Yeah.
Here's what she didn't do. She did not dial the phone 1,210 times. That's how many dials it took for her. That's how many days of dialing is that? At what is it? Trish Bertuzzi in the Bridge Group say 42 dials a day.
Yeah,
so that's 30 days of dialing.
Man.
Yeah, so that's 30 days of dialing, right? Done in 5 hours and 12 minutes with no effort.
You'd get some severe carpal tunnel if you tried to do that many dials in one day. Just hard dialing. No, I mean, it's just not possible. There's just not enough, no one could make that many dials, hard dials a day. That's absolutely astounding.
Yeah. What? By the way, I got to give you Cheryl's numbers. Cheryl runs our flight school division. I got to give you her numbers because she does a different play. She does the insistence play. Like you're putting gas in your car. She had one the other day where the CEO's putting gas in his car. She only calls the CEOs and CFOs. And he says, Cheryl, I'm putting gas in my car and it's raining. And she says, fantastic. I'm a morning person. I'll shoot you something for Thursday. We'll move it around if we have to. He goes, oh, great. Right now he's accepted a meeting. Now you could say, oh, she should have qualified him. Trust me, the CEO of this company, it's a Fortune 2000 company, is pretty qualified to talk to, right? CEOs of Fortune 2000 companies, by definition, they're qualified to have a 15-minute conversation with somebody, right?
Right.
So the question is, though, well, is he going to show? And her point is, who cares? This is somebody who answers their phone. So if they don't show, put them in the no-show list, push the button, use Connect and Sell, and talk to them again and say, Henry, and it's actually just talk to them again. You don't even have to try because the system does the trying for you. So she set 6 meetings today, by the way, on 11 conversations, 54.5% conversion.
Wow.
And she did that in an hour and 12 minutes, 4.94 meetings per hour.
Man. So here's a question from the sales ops people that might listen to the show, or the sales leadership that listens to the show. Where does the data come from that you feed into the system? Do you guys provide that, or do you tend to just integrate with something like a Zoom Info or Discover Org or both? I guess those are the same company now. What do you suggest there, just to make sure that there's enough data to feed into the system to make that volume of dials on a given day?
Yeah, there's two things to consider. So first, we love ZoomInfo. We're partners ZoomInfo. We think they're tremendous. And they have as current a set of good phone numbers as we've seen from anybody. There are some other good providers. Cognizant is good. There's others that are good providers out there, but ZoomInfo does a great job. And we actually will go ahead if somebody wants, and either we will enhance a list or we'll generate a new list for just a test drive, because ZoomInfo lets us do that. So that's very kind.
Yeah.
So we like those guys. We suck data directly out of CRM systems, if that's what makes sense. That often does. So we hook right up to the Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, HubSpot, whatever it happens to be. And it's all pre-integrated. There's no code. It just plugs right in, and you just twirl a couple of little, kind of like this field maps to this field dials, or you're twirling dials. You're setting settings to get it to be configured, and then it's all magic. At that point, whatever's in those lists gets synchronized into ConnectAndSell. So we don't provide the data, but we do data consulting, and we will, if you have a ZoomInfo account, we'll build lists for you for free. We're big believers in centralized list management. I get that a lot of people think territories make sense at the top of the funnel. We don't get it. And every technology advance in history, before you get speed, you want liquidity. You want to have something that's more liquid, that moves around more easily. So our people work off lead pools, and we highly recommend it, because let's face it, giving somebody a territory at the top of the funnel has got some weird implications, like they're going to be there forever.
True.
That's a weird implication.
And then just, distributing your customer base, because then it might skew towards one coast, right? Or, you have one rep who's having higher repetitions and more success, or more at-bats, if you will, because they happen to have the San Francisco region or the New York region. Is that a fair assumption?
Right.
Okay. So yeah, rather than do that, it's a lead pool that's more distributed and gives, more distribution across the whole team.
Exactly. So our lead pools are dynamically managed. When you plug into a lead pool and you say, I want a session out of that lead pool, then you get a randomized subset of the lead pool. No cherry picking allowed. We're not really, for our own team, and we recommend this, we're not really interested in turning over the company's go-to-market strategy to sales reps. And the strategy is expressed in the lists, in the targeting. So why would you just say, hey, you're 24 years old. Why don't you go come up with the company's go-to-market strategy by doing some research? Like, what? It's hard enough cold calling people.
Yeah. What do you, so if there were a startup that didn't have, say, access to ZoomInfo or one of those data tools, is there anything you can do for those early stage startups that may not have all of the fancy, expensive lead databases? What do you suggest there typically?
Well, you could go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator and combine it with Lead IQ, and you can do really well there. So that's a little more manual, but it's also very precise, because you get the query precision of Sales Navigator, and then you get the ability to turn that small subset that you're coming up with of 100, 200, 300. By the way, I should have corrected this misapprehension, which is always there. It's perfectly natural. You don't need a ton of leads to use ConnectAndSell. My chairman, Sean McLaren, who, by the way, has done well in life, shall we say, just saying, he still uses ConnectAndSell. Let me see how his stats are here. Yeah, there he is. He was calling on a list of 14 people today, had 2 conversations and 2 meetings.
So that's an assumption I made, was that you have to have a massive 2, 3, 4, 5,000, 10,000 list, when it sounds like this could be just as effective if you're focused in on 10 people or 14 people in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea is, as a sales rep, as any professional, Your time is the thing you can't get any more of. You're stuck, right? So we're not really going fast in one sense. All we're doing is compressing time. So something like, say, a list of 42, that would be all day according to the bridge group. Well, 42 with Connect and Sell, let me look at the numbers here today. 3 hours, 41 minutes, and 48 seconds accomplished 865 dials.
Wow.
So, think 200 dials an hour roughly in this particular case. So 42 would be 15 minutes, during which, by the way, you can do other work, like Cheryl Turner's other work is pushing her kid in the swings, but you could be doing something else because you're just waiting for a bloop in your ear.
I think probably the most powerful aspect of it too, and this is what I found just doing hard cold calls throughout different points of my career, is there's power in consistency. And not to use too much of the athletic analogy, but top athletes, I think it's been pretty well established that what makes a top athlete successful is how consistent they are in their training, in their diet, in their exercise regimen, in their practice, all of that. And I think it's the same for sales reps. Again, I know it's an overdone analogy to compare sales reps to elite athletes, but I'll keep going. And what I've found is I've been the most consistent in my career at hitting my target earnings and quotas and things like that when I'm consistent at the output. And what I love about the product is that it takes away that the kind of alligator brain that says, I have to go make 30 calls today. I don't have the energy. I don't feel good today. It sounds like, your team or, your customers are just pushing a button. They don't have to have that internal debate of, I've got a splitting headache and I know I'm supposed to be doing my 30 calls. I have it blocked in my calendar. I know that's what's going to take to be successful and achieve my targets, but man, I've got a headache, stomach ache, whatever it is. I got a doctor's appointment, something that sort of disrupts the normal pattern. And it sounds like you guys remove that problem completely by just saying, look, push the button, still go to your doctor's appointment, but just while you're in the car driving there, you're going to probably hit your daily target of cold calls. I love that because I do think that that's where the compounding takes place, is in the consistency. And that's the hardest thing to overcome as a human, is how to be consistent at something like cold calling and really stick to it. It's just like dieting, it's just like exercise or anything else. It's really hard to stick to something like that every single day. And I struggle with that a lot because we don't have Connect and Sell implemented. And it is I need to make X number of dials per day, when to find time to do that, especially when things are fluid. You get pulled into meetings, there's fires to put out, there's follow-ups to take on, there's internal nonsense. So I think it's really fantastic that, your reps and of course your customers' reps can push a button and eliminate that sort of human error and everything too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because the psychology flips completely. My fiance came down with me to Austin. Speaking of Austin,
yeah,
she runs a bit of business for a big company, about $1 billion of business actually.
wow.
And she had a little bit of time when she was free to come down with me to witness a test drive with Google Cloud. And I asked her at the end of the test drive, I said, well, what do you think? It's 26 reps. They set 46 meetings in 2 hours and 18 minutes. What do you think? And she said, I don't know anything about the top of the funnel. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, strategic accounts, right? I mean,
Right.
$250 million each. Yeah, not a lot of pushing the button in that one, right?
Sure.
Although
sure.
she's opened her mind to some possibilities. And but she said, what was weird is that thing that you guys do, that Connect and Sell thing, it caused a complete cultural transformation of a team in 30 minutes with no consulting.
Wow.
They were excited. They were having fun. And that's exactly what happens. Is this cold calling isn't unfun. It's actually super fun. It's cold dialing that's unfun.
Right. Yeah. That's the part that
Talking to people's fun, right? I mean, if you're in sales and you don't like to talk to people, you got kind of a serious issue. It's like you're like a surgeon who faints at the sight of blood. It's like, I'm sorry, it's fun to talk to people. It's really fun if you get the psychology right and you're practiced. And you made this point. There's, You got to have the repetitions. You've got to be
Mm-hmm.
coached. You got to be practiced. You know, when I was a young rock climber growing up in Arizona, we were kind of self-taught, which is pretty dangerous for that sport when you think about it, right? And we
Yeah.
took up coaching each other, right? Going out to the Carefree rock pile,
Oh,
and
yeah.
watching each other. We'd watch each other boulder and give each other tips. You know, it's like, try this, try this. There's some weird things you can do physically rock climbing. And then there was also the question, well, you know, kind of like, how's your mind working? What's safe to do based on your mental state? All that, you know, it's good practice for business, actually.
Sure.
But what's in anything without the repetitions? I mean, there's an old Russian proverb, right? Повторение мать учения. I learned it from my Russian teacher in high school in Arizona. You know, we all studied
Wow.
Russian back then.
Oh, yeah.
And that it means repetition is the mother of learning.
Huh.
And it's true. Repetition is the mother of learning, but highly precisely coached repetition is the mother of mastery. And that's what this game gets super fun. I look at, here's a guy who works for us, Rob Arnold. Since the 1st of June, Rob has had 991 conversations and set 74 meetings. Now, is that fun?
Wow. That sounds fun to me.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet, right? No, here's what he didn't do. Here's how many dials he would have had to do by hand without ConnectAndSell. 27,979 dials this month.
Man.
It's unimaginable, right? You would never imagine it. So he doesn't have the frustration and the waste. He just has the opportunity to be an amazing professional SDR, BDR, whatever you want to call him. And he is. And so is Steve Cooperman, so is Terry Spencer. So these people do this for a living and they love it. And yet I can come down deeper to folks who dialed, had a little less. Here's Sean McLaren. He's our executive chairman. He only had 323 dials, 31 conversations, and 4 meetings. But Sean's meetings are worth about 20 times the rest of ours. And here's a guy who's I'm not a young guy. I'm almost 67. He's a little more mature than I am. Here's another guy. He's a famous sales guy named John Jackson. And John Jackson is the inventor of what I call the blue ocean strategy of sales. So that means don't ever compete a deal. Talk to people way before they're ready to buy. Don't wait for the intent data to tell you. Let the conversations tell you the truth. Yeah. So here's John. John was a little sick this month, actually. He's even more mature than Sean, if that's possible. So in 9 hours, 41 minutes, here's a guy who's in his, I'll say it, he's in his late 70s. And how many SDRs do you know, young SDRs, had 1,000 legitimate dials in the month of June, had 74 conversations and set 19 meetings?
Very few. I mean, I can't imagine, especially this time of year. Everyone's heads on summer breaks and travel, and I highly doubt that's common without some enhancement for sure.
Yeah, my little team, by the way, had 6,259 conversations with VPs of sales. Man. They set 570 meetings. And this team would fit in a thimble. In Silicon Valley, they would fit in a thimble. No, I'd be told you're an idiot. This team's so small, you must not be a real CEO. Can't you hire people?
Yeah. You guys could rent a closet out in Google's offices or something, Google's campus. Wow.
Exactly.
Well, Chris, I know we're coming up here on time. Any final words of wisdom you care to share with the audience? And then I'd also love to learn how folks can get in touch with you. Please feel free to share how we can best get in touch, especially for anyone who's listening that has an interest in learning more about ConnectAndSell.
Sure, I'll do the last in order. So
Sure.
Check out my podcast. Corey, Frank, and I have a podcast called Market Dominance Guys. It's like the car guys, all one word, marketdominanceguys.com.
Awesome.
There's 80 something episodes. It's a cookbook on market dominance using a conversation first approach.
Okay.
And basically check it out. The thesis is pave the market with trust, harvest the trust over the next 3 or 4 years. It's a different way of going about stuff. You can reach me at chris.beall@connectandsell.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. I'm the only CEO of Connect and Sell who's out there. I don't know. We'll keep adding to that. So that's all easy. You know, the final thoughts are this. I've got a guy working with me who he actually runs our flight schools now. His name is Donnie Crawford. Donnie Crawford had an attitude. He's the nicest human being you've ever met, by the way. He's frighteningly nice. You would think he's not in sales. He's just like, really, Donnie, are you always going to be this nice? And he just laughs and goes, yeah, it's a problem. I'm just like that. Ha ha ha. And but Donnie used to go in and interview for sales jobs, and then he would say, when they get done, they'd offer him the job. He says, oh, by the way, I have one condition of employment. And they're thinking it's going to be salary or something. What's that? He says, I won't work for you unless you give me Connect and Sell. I don't care what the rest of the team has. You get this sort of shocked look, right? So my point is, look, you're a salesperson if you're listening to this. If your job's selling meetings, and all of us, our job is selling meetings, that's actually our number one job. The most interesting thing we do, the most valuable thing we do in our entire career. I've been doing this for 42 years, and I can tell you, selling a meeting is the single most valuable thing you do. You turn if into when. And that's all of sales, is turn if into when. See if you can figure out how to take one of our test drives and just experience it. Come to me, because you got to find out, what is it like not to be in that cage where you can't talk to people, because that's not sales. Sales starts with the conversation. Learn to master the conversation, whether you get a hold of our stuff or not. If you work for a startup of some kind and they go, oh, I don't have enough money for this. Well, our test drive is actually priced pretty well for startups, free. And I don't care if it converts. I just care that people have the experience.